What if learning isn't just about, passively taking in information? What if it's actually this dynamic, active process, something involving your entire brain and, get this, even your body?
Sounds surprising, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Because we're always told, sit still, listen quietly.
Exactly. We tend to picture learning as just absorbing facts,
Mm.
like pouring water into a glass.
Mm.
But this new science paints a much, much more active picture. It's about what's happening inside us.
Right. And that's what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into learnodynamics.
Mm.
It's this fascinating new science, really, that completely redefines how knowledge flows and, well, transforms within us.
And it's not just some abstract theory, right?
Not at all. It's actually deeply rooted in something called motor science. And
Mhm.
it offers these really profound insights into what really happens when we learn something new.
Yeah, and our guide for this is excerpts from Learnodynamics, The Science of Knowledge Transfer by Shiva Narayan Takshila Page. And like you said, it's not just an academic paper. It feels more like a blueprint for understanding how knowledge actually moves from, say, a book or a teacher into our brains, how it becomes truly ours.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty clear then. We want to unpack this whole idea of learning as knowledge transfer. We're going to reveal some honestly surprising facts about how your brain works. And most importantly, we want to give you some actionable insights, things you can use to optimize your own learning journey.
Whether you're studying for a test or trying to pick up a new skill at work or, just trying to stay informed.
Exactly. There should be something here for everyone. So let's jump in.
Okay, so at its heart, Learnodynamics puts forward this universal law. Learning is knowledge transfer. Simple statement, but deep implications. It's saying knowledge isn't just stuck in a classroom. It's dynamic. It's active. It uses all these different channels and engages multiple parts of your brain simultaneously.
And these channels are incredibly diverse, aren't they, when you start thinking about it?
Totally.
Knowledge comes from books, sure, but also teachers, your friends, your peers, even from functional objects like learning to use a tool by actually messing around with it.
Right. Or just the environment itself. Spatial learning.
It really highlights how interconnected it all is. You're picking stuff up from everywhere. And here's where it gets really fascinating, maybe a little complex at first.
Hmm.
The idea is that all types of learning, cognitive, emotional, rational, academic stuff, motor skills, you name it, even implicit knowledge, things you don't even know you know, it all gets converted ultimately into what the author calls motor knowledge of cerebellar learnography.
Okay, that's a mouthful. Let's break that down a bit. Motor knowledge, cerebellar learnography.
Right. So the core idea is that every kind of learning, even just reading quietly, gets processed through your brain's action centers. The cerebellum is key for motor control and learning. It's like your brain is always figuring out how to do something with what it learns, even if that doing is just organizing thoughts or connecting ideas.
Exactly. It's preparing for potential action. The author uses this great metaphor. Object definition is the fertile seeds of knowledge, and brain page-making process is the germination of quality seeds.
Oh, I like that. Brain page making. So your brain is actively building its own internal knowledge structures.
Precisely, like creating your own personal mental wiki, constantly updated.
And the goal, then, of understanding all this, it's to make education better, more effective, foster lifelong learning.
That's the idea. Optimize the whole process for everyone. And this leads us straight into something really crucial, something often overlooked, Laws 1 and 2 in the book. It's about the transformative power of physical activity.
Ah, okay. So not just sitting still, movement actually changes the brain.
Remarkable changes, yeah. Tangible changes to structure and function.
So the research is saying you can convert academic learning, like from a book, into the processing of motor knowledge through physical activities while you're learning.
Exactly. During the knowledge transfer process itself, it's an embodied approach. Your body is deeply involved.
Wow. So think about learning a dance step, maybe.
Perfect example. Your brain processes spatial info, timing, sequence. That's motor knowledge. But it's not just for dancers. This kind of active learning boosts brain plasticity overall.
Plasticity, meaning the brain's ability to change and adapt.
Right. And it improves executive functions planning, problem solving. It sharpens attention, boosts cognitive abilities generally, helps form new memories.
It's like a catalyst for a stronger brain.
Totally.
Okay, here's the part that really blew my mind when I was reading this. Physical activity can induce neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells. Seriously.
Seriously, brand new brain cells. And it also increases the volume of gray matter in
Yeah.
key areas.
Gray matter, that's the processing part of the brain, right?
Essentially, yes. Particularly in the hippocampus, the author calls it the search engine of the human brain.
I like that description, the search engine.
hmm And also other important spots like the caudate nucleus for habit learning and the nucleus accumbens linked to reward and motivation.
So your brain literally expands its capacity when you move. That's huge.
It is huge. And the source connects this directly to real-world outcomes. It says pencil power develops from the motor knowledge of brain circuits.
Pencil power, meaning better grades, test scores.
Exactly. Higher scores aren't just raw smarts. They correlate with better executive function, faster processing speed, and yes, greater gray matter volume in those specific regions, boosted by activity.
There's a direct link.
A direct link. And neuroimaging studies confirm it. Consistent aerobic exercise, for example, increases gray matter pretty much everywhere, but especially in areas for cognitive control and memory.
Like the prefrontal cortex for decisions.
Right, the hippocampus for memory, the cingulate cortex for emotion and cognition, it's all interconnected. Mind and body working together.
It really drives home that connection, doesn't it? Your brain literally grows with movement.
Which brings us nicely to Law 3. This one's fascinating. It's about the transformation of knowledge transfer. How knowledge bridges cognition thinking and emotion feeling.
Okay, so how does that play out in, say, education?
Well, the author explains how limbic knowledge, that's the stuff tied to motivation, emotion, drive, transforms into cognitive knowledge, logical understanding, through the dynamic application of motor knowledge.
So students doing activities that involve movement or action.
Right. It stimulates their logic circuits, but it's fueled by that initial emotional engagement or motivation. It leads to deeper understanding, better quality work.
Feeling it, then actively processing it.
Kind of, yeah. And here's a cool parallel the author draws. Cinema. Acting. In acting, it's the reverse. Cognitive knowledge is transformed into limbic knowledge
How so?
via dynamic motor knowledge, again, especially in the cingulate cortex, part of the limbic system. Actors take their understanding of a script, the character's thoughts, that's cognitive, and through physical actions, gestures, expressions, they infuse it with raw emotion. They make the ideas feel real.
That's incredible. So cognition, emotion, action, they're constantly interacting. It really changes how you think about learning and performing in art or just in life.
It absolutely does. It shows knowledge isn't just what you know, but how you feel it and what you do with it.
Okay, so moving on. Laws 4 and 5 get into the specifics of how we acquire and build knowledge. Law 4 talks about book-to-brain direct transfer.
Right. Books are presented as father teachers,
Yeah.
the originators of knowledge chapters, and the author mentions specific types of brain page books: Spectrum, Matrix, Source, Zide, miniature designed for this direct transfer, structured to just click with the brain.
And the teacher's role shifts quite a bit in this model.
It does. And what's called the direct school system, the teacher is less of a lecturer, more of a task moderator.
A moderator, facilitating the brain page making process.
Exactly. The idea is, if students are actively building their own knowledge, less direct teaching is needed.
So students need to take more initiative, especially in these miniature schools or collaborative classrooms.
Yeah, making their own smart brain page modules using visuospatial learnography, using visuals and spatial layout to structure information mentally.
Okay, so that's getting the knowledge in. What about Law 5, the breaking process?
Right. This is about how we handle complex information. We often learn it in segments, blocks, or chunks, because trying to grasp the whole knowledge at once is just too hard usually.
That makes sense. Break it down.
Exactly. It's called differential learnography. Think of worked out examples in math or science. They break down the problem step by step.
Okay, you break it down. And then Law 5 also covers the making process, right? Building it back up.
Precisely. The module builder or page builder, that's integral learnography. You take those chunks you learned and reassemble them into a complete, coherent knowledge structure.
And this involves, what was it, visuomotor learnography of cerebellar basal ganglia circuitry?
Yeah. Engaging the brain parts that link vision, movement, and complex learning. Deconstruction, then intelligent reconstruction.
Got it. Breaking and making.
Now, laws 6 and 7 go even deeper. They talk about the convergence of learning and the brain's own drives. Law 6 introduces this idea of singularity.
Singularity, like everything coming together.
Pretty much. All the different types of knowledge, transforlim, cognitive, motor, academic, CRIF, they all converge into a single behavioral output. The author calls this Zide in knowledge, and happens within the basal ganglia circuitry.
So all the different threads of learning weave together into one seamless understanding or action.
That's the essence of it. The singularity of brain page theory.
And there's this fascinating implication that a student can become a small teacher.
Yes. By achieving this singularity of Zide output knowledge during brain page modulation rehearsals.
Rehearsals, like practice.
Intense focus practice. When you've internalized something so deeply, you don't just get it, you can explain it or demonstrate it effortlessly.
Yeah.
You naturally become able to teach it.
Mastery empowers teaching. Interesting.
Then the author unpacks the working drives of the brain, the things that push us to learn.
Which are?
Fear, pleasure, motivation, conscience, and necessity. Powerful forces shaping our journey.
Okay, how does this connect to real challenges, like, say, fear of public speaking?
Good question. The source says brain page development of knowledge transfer can correct disturbing emotional channels. It specifically mentions public speaking anxiety as an amygdala problem.
So by actively processing and integrating knowledge, you can actually rewire those fear responses.
The theory suggests, yes, you're building new pathways, new associations.
And conscience, how does that fit in?
Conscience, our moral compass, develops from transferring cognitive knowledge. It sparks emotional and rational connections. It's identified as drive 4, rooted in that same cerebellar basal ganglia motor circuitry.
Wow. And there's that striking phrase, motor science can change students' learning pain into learning passion and pleasure.
Right. Engaging the body doesn't just help you learn better, it can actually transform the feeling of learning, from struggle to engagement, even joy.
That's incredibly hopeful. Turning a chore into something rewarding. Okay, final stretch. Laws 8, 9, and 10. Uploading, downloading, channels, and the future.
Law 8 defines learning as the upload of knowledge transfer. That's absorbing info, forming those brain page modules.
Uploading, okay. And working, applying knowledge.
That's the download of knowledge transfer, like writing with a pencil, solving a problem, performing a skill. Upload in, download out.
And here's a statistic that really stood out to me.
The 20/80 split.
Yeah, students' brain learns knowledge 20% from teaching and 80% from brain page learnography.
It's a powerful statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really emphasizes active engagement. What your brain does with the information is the bulk of the learning.
It's not just about listening to a lecture.
Not at all. It's about that internal construction work.
And Law 9 circles back to the channels, reinforcing how diverse they are.
Right. Books, teachers, peers, the small teachers, objects for hands-on learning, space and environment for spatial learning. It's a rich ecosystem.
We're constantly learning from everything around us.
Pretty much. And then Law 10 looks ahead. Advancements of knowledge transfer in machine learnography.
AI, robotics, the future of learning tech.
Exactly. Exploring how AI, sophisticated models, transformers, robotics, how they can create personalized, adaptive, super efficient learning experiences.
Moving way beyond the old one-size-fits-all model.
Definitely. And it's not just about machines learning. It's about how this tech revolutionizes our learning.
Creating new opportunities for human development.
Unparalleled opportunities, the author suggests. But it also highlights the need for us, for humans, to learn how to collaborate with these machines effectively.
So we need to adapt alongside the technology. Imagine AI designing custom brain page modules for you.
That seems to be the direction things are heading.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big picture takeaway?
Learnodynamics gives us this really profound but also practical framework for understanding how we learn and use knowledge. It truly is, as the author puts it, the science of learning application in moving bodies or functional objects.
So by understanding these laws, these dynamics, we can unlock more of our brain's potential.
That's the hope. Foster a more effective, more meaningful, maybe even more passionate learning journey for ourselves and for others.
Right. So here's something to think about, especially considering that 80-20 split. 80% learning from active brain page learnography. What's one small active brain page making step you could take today, right now? How can you shift your own learning, even just a little bit, from being passive reception into something more dynamic, something more motor-driven, more engaged? What's one thing you could do differently to really cement that knowledge in your brain?